In Washington, D.C., Jesse Dollemore and I spoke with Congresswoman Yassamin Ansari. Super interesting work that she's doing, both as a newer member of the House of Representatives and also as one of the youngest members of the House of Representatives. We spoke to her about how do you oppose the authoritarianism? How do you oppose a Republican majority? What do Democrats need to do? Let's check it out. So I want to talk about Iran first. At this point, there were total obliterations, partial obliterations, a setback of 9 to 12 months. Now it seems like a setback of 3 to 4 months. I'm curious your take on, are we just going to be in the same position again 3 months from now? And is there anything that can be done between now and then so that if the president wants to do another version of the same thing, maybe it does have to go through Congress and there's a vote? What can be done?
Great questions. And I've thought a lot about this because obviously we know that Donald Trump has acted in a way that is so unpredictable. I think that everything that's happened over the last 12 days when it comes to foreign policy in Iran, I couldn't have made it up in my wildest imaginations. And I'm prefacing this just because, like, truly he went over the course of 72 hours from saying, he wants regime change to asking a city to evacuate to wanting total peace. Now, as you're mentioning, the intelligence is all over the place. Yesterday, we were supposed to have a briefing by senior administration officials, which never happened, which just shows me that they don't know what to say and they are preparing to lie to people because they don't, the intelligence isn't backing it up. So first and foremost, I just want to say I don't trust this administration at all and Donald Trump when it comes to handling this issue. I think that the fact that he decided to take this action, bomb these nuclear sites without congressional authority, without demonstrating that the intelligence was there and demonstrate the urgency of doing so, and then now we don't even know what the effectiveness of the strikes are, I think that puts us in a very precarious position with negotiations, because now you have a regime in Iran that is further oppressing its people, obviously worried about its own survival, and so will likely be even harsher. We already know that they're imprisoning a bunch of other people and, saying that they are committing espionage. I am worried because, if it's true that they are only just a few months away, we have now made it so that Iran would not, like, why would they want to negotiate with the United States, right? We also have lost our partners in this. We have really alienated Europe, who was heavily involved in negotiations. The first round, when the JCPOA existed, China and Russia were very much involved. I mean, that's why that agreement was so historic. It not only included our allies, but it included many of our adversaries. And so I think the best case scenario is that we can really make the case to the public right now that this was wrong. And polling does show that Democrats and independents largely believe that the strikes were illegal and should never have happened. And I think that pressure is going to continue to mount on the president. And we know that he's somebody who aspires to get the Nobel Peace Prize and wants to be this master negotiator and is clearly very frustrated with some of his senior level officials for not being on the exact same line that he is. So I think that I'm going to continue to push for diplomacy. I think that hopefully, we're going to have a vote on this war powers resolution that's bipartisan. We need to keep making that case. There was a press conference this morning on it outside of the Capitol, but we just can't let this go because I think we have completely alienated ourselves globally. We've potentially created an even more hostile regime in Iran, and they may end up rushing towards a nuclear weapon as a result of what was done, because why would they not?
What do you think can be done from a messaging standpoint, both, in a position like yours or a position like ours, our audiences, just, regular, everyday citizens, from a messaging standpoint to communicate to others who may be on the fence? Because we're seeing Donald Trump's polls in a steady plunge right now,
right,
especially related to what just happened,
right,
in Iran. His unpredictability, I think, needs to be communicated. I mean, even the fact that the Pentagon sent out 2 separate, almost diversionary sortie missions because he might talk about it and to safeguard the safety of the troops. What can we be doing? What can you in power be doing more to communicate to the American people exactly how unpredictable and dangerous he is?
Great question. I mean, I think we need to lean into the economics of it as well. I mean, as you have Trump, making these reckless decisions and conducting foreign policy via Truth Social, Republicans in Congress are trying to rip away healthcare from 15 million Americans. My generation and everyone, older than me has grown up with these forever wars in the United States. And I think we really need to hone in on that message that nobody wants another Iraq, another Afghanistan. Trillions of dollars were spent, millions of lives were lost. Meanwhile, Americans cannot afford housing, they can't afford healthcare, they can't afford their energy bills. And so getting us locked into another, long-term conflict, which is always a threat when you are getting militarily involved, is going to be devastating for Americans here at home. I think we need to focus in on the impact on Americans here, our troops, and then, of course, the destabilization of the region and the lives lost. I think with, the rise of social media and TikTok, I think especially young people are so tuned into conflict around the world and really don't like seeing, conflict and innocent civilians killed. And there already have been hundreds of civilians killed, both Iranians and Israelis. And so I think more people need to be talking about this as elected leaders. I think there can be some fear sometimes on issues related to foreign policy. It's definitely challenging. It's not everyone's area of expertise, but this is pretty straightforward in that not only was it illegal, we don't even know that it was effective, and now they're lying about the intelligence, and we know where that got us with Iraq.
I'm curious if you're willing to share, if you've had conversations with your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle. There seems to be this kind of split within MAGA about Iran, where on the one hand, there are those who never really believed in the whole "I'm the anti-war candidate" thing, and they're saying, well, of course, that was never true, so of course this is now what's happening. On the other hand, you do have the people who did believe it and now are upset at what's going on, and they're either equivocating and saying, well, he didn't really declare a war, so then this doesn't really violate the principle that he campaigned on, these sort of like technicalities around it. Have you heard anything, without naming anybody, of course, about
or
how
if you want
you're,
to.
or feel free to name people too. I would love it if you did name some people, but I don't expect you to. As far as what are they really thinking as, did they really fall for this is the anti-war candidate, or is it, we did actually expect this?
I think I've had very few direct conversations, but I've been following this issue super closely over the last 2 weeks. And I think it's interesting to watch the reactions within the MAGA portion of the party, but also generally. I mean, I think that Ted Cruz interview was very enlightening. Yes. And I don't think, I'm just going to be honest, I think that if you interviewed many members of Congress and the Senate, you would have a similar response in terms of not knowing much about a country that you want to get militarily involved with, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I think that's been a major issue in U.S. foreign policy for decades throughout our history. I think that we need more people who understand the domestic politics of the countries that they seek to engage with, whether diplomatically or militarily, and know just the basic dynamics of that country. Ted Cruz didn't know that the population of the country is 92 million. That's a third of the United States. I mean, this is a massive country with different ethnic minorities. The vast majority of people in the country oppose the regime, but that's 80%. So the 20% that don't, that's still a big portion of the country and a lot of people. And so I think what has been disheartening to see, going back to your question with Republicans, is I think there's also a faction of the party that is using this now as a justification of how to treat immigrants domestically. There's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who of course have been, openly opposed to war and are, America first. But there's also others like Nancy Mace and others within MAGA, the pundits, Laura Loomer and such, who will do anything Trump says and are very actively, like Laura Loomer has been using her platform to talk about deportations of of Muslims or anyone that they think, basically anyone who's from the Middle East, who they think, no matter what their religion is, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been also thinking a lot about how Republicans are now going to use this as a way to continue ramping up their mass deportation agenda and ICE funding and all of that cruelty and racism that's taking place.
It seems like we're in a golden opportunity as Democrats and as people who message to the public to get ahead of that kind of a narrative that Laura Loomer and her Islamophobia and her hatred and her bigotry is, in order to get ahead of that and allow people to think, oh yeah, Iran bad, Muslim, and they make these weird connections, is that the vast majority of America do not want to be involved and embroiled in another conflict overseas.
Right.
And I think it's incumbent upon you as a member of Congress, us with, you know, our platforms, and the American people in general, to talk to their acquaintances and their friends and their family to get everybody on the same page that this is not what we want.
Yeah.
Where are you on on the fact that so many people are ardently opposed to it, and whether it be Democrat or Republican? I mean, we can all be doing a better job.
Yeah. I mean, the public is opposed to it. That's a fact. I think we can keep educating them, but there is a disconnect between the public and how much leaders from both parties have been talking about being anti-war. Like, it is just crazy to me. Even, I think the War Powers Resolution has like 60 some co-sponsors now. It should be in the hundreds.
Right.
I mean, we know the mistakes that were made. I don't know why more Democrats aren't on it. I, of course, don't know why more Republicans aren't on it. But like, even our party, we should be the anti-war party, and we should be more, you know, in tune with the mistakes that were made under George W. Bush and Republican presidencies, and be, you know, leading with that, because the public doesn't want to see it. So I totally agree with you, but I think I put more, you know, more blame on elected officials and not making this a bigger issue than it already has been.
Last thing I want to ask you about, a lot of people in my audience, you can weigh in too, Jesse, as yours, but I think it's the same. There's not a high level of trust with the Democratic Party right now. And there's sort of this analogy to, you know, if you turn on the Super Bowl and the color commentary is a football coach who lost everything and now is brought in to say, I'm going to analyze this game and tell you what needs to happen. The equivalent to that would be Democrats having
I'm trying to wrap my
lost
mind
so
around sports
much.
analogies.
The coach that lost is brought in as the expert, right?
Okay.
And the analogy being Democrats that did not win in November. Now a lot of our audiences are saying, listen, we know all the bad things that Donald Trump is doing, the authoritarianism, all of it. And also we are unsure what is the path in 2026 and later in 2028 for Democrats to turn things around and take back control, which would be necessary in order to achieve political change. What approach do you think the Democratic Party needs to take that's beyond just these guys are no good?
Yeah. I think we have to be as bold as we possibly can be. I think that on Trump's end, you have somebody who is literally just like saying a million things every single day, obviously during the campaign, making every promise imaginable, bold promises that like any reasonable person knows is probably not happening. But like, I'm going to bring down grocery prices on day one. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine on day one. And we, largely Democrats, are always just like softening every proposal and idea to the point, because we're like, we think so in the weeds on it. Like, oh, how are we actually going to get this done? And where's the money going to come from to get this done? And we need like a 30-point plan. But people are so frustrated with the status quo and they want change. And I think, you know, the mayor's race in New York City, you know, primary was a great testament to that last night, that like, people want bold ideas and they also want authenticity. We've been scripted for far too long, try to be just like the perfect, you know, elected official politician, and people just want real people. Like, even if they don't 100% agree with what you're saying, they want to know that they like trust that you are a human being. That's at least what I feel.
No question here, but it is heartening to hear someone who isn't seeming to adhere to a political order that no longer exists in America. Having some younger people, some younger voices with some new ideas who don't abide by this, oh, my good friend across the aisle, while you're staring at Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, we don't have partners in governance anymore with the opposite party. And it's nice to hear. So thank you to hear that. from someone who's elected and works in the halls here and knows the dysfunction and the weird way of operating that is dead. I mean,
Yeah.
it no longer exists. So, no
I
question.
mean,
but
I'm
thank you.
new, and I came from the Phoenix City Council where like I did work with Republicans. You had to, you're technically nonpartisan. It's much more collaborative. But the truth here, to your point, is just like, how can you work with someone or a party that is literally like completely okay with a president who is basically an authoritarian and wants to be a dictator? Like, it's hard to be buddy buddy with that
Yeah.
kind of, a person.
For all the talk of bringing down the temperature,
Exactly.
and I don't know how you feel, David, but I feel like it's not our responsibility to bring down to put out the fire necessarily that was started and continues to be stoked by Donald Trump and his
100%.
acolytes. So
Yeah.
it's a tough spot, and
Yeah.
you have an impossible job. So
Thanks so much for talking to us today.
Thank you.